Jason, it is a pleasure to talk to you today, my friend. But I think there's a lot of people interested. I had a little teaser video yesterday, did a quick little LinkedIn Live, and said that I would be talking to a hypnotist and a life coach, and people went crazy for that information. They were so excited to hear about it. I got all sorts of messages and DMs asking, who. But introduce yourself. I think everybody wants to know a little bit more about you.
All right. Thank you for having me. I love to be here with your community, which I'm now part of, which I'm
Yeah.
excited about. And hopefully my community is here watching, supporting us. That's great. Um, Kind of starting at the beginning a little bit. I think it's pertinent to kind of what you do and what we're talking about. I've always been a healer. I've always been like the person that people go to from a very young age. Um, there's family lines and things of that nature, but I always knew that's who I was and what I was to do, was to help people, but it was never directed. I never really had like a mentor or anything like that. So I just kind of went through my life and, I helped people and I reached out to people and very empathetic and kind of went that route. Um, and then as I got older, it just was, it just was who I was. But I always knew that that was what my calling was to help others and to support people. And graduated high school, went in the Marine Corps, got through that, had those experiences. And then when I got out, I just kind of do what most of us do, and I went to work. I just got a job, and um, it didn't it didn't come to me to be able to have a vocation of doing this at the time. It was really just, well, it's part of who I am, and I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm going to work and make money and live my life and go from there. I got into retail leadership, which, if you've ever been in that area, you know that it's really about growth and development and helping people and work with a lot of younger people that are kind of figuring their lives out. So I was able to really do what I wanted to do in a sense by still doing that without fully going into it as a career. Um, the universe kept giving me signals like, hey, you should be out there doing this full time. My wife was, she's my biggest supporter, and she would always say, the universe is giving you a message, and things would happen. And throughout this time, I knew it was time to do it. So I started taking steps, and so I started looking for like a so-called vessel, a toolbox of how I could help people, very directed. And I found NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and NLP is basically, the gist of it is using the language of the mind to get the results that you want. So I started studying that. Then in 2010, I actually went and I got my training and got certified. Well, part of that training and certification was there was three certifications. It was NLP, hypnosis, and a program called timeline therapy. It's a modality that was done by my instructor. Um, and at the time, I was like, hypnosis? Oh, I guess I have to take it, Um,
It's one of those core electives that you just don't want to take.
exactly. Come to find out, neurolinguistics actually is it's a modeling of a bunch of different things, and hypnosis is one of the things they modeled. So hypnosis is inherent in NLP as well. I didn't know at the time, but and then 2015, I went and got my master practitioner and got my certification. And at that point, I started seeing clients and I started seeing people. And over the years, using hypnotic language and hypnosis has really become my go-to. It's really been, it's so powerful. So I've really gone to that. And that's kind of, and then a year ago, I went to full-time with my business.
Wow, that's exciting. What an interesting journey. And it is funny how the universe kind of guides you. I'm a very firm believer in that as well. We think we're headed on a path and we're full steam ahead, and then all of a sudden, sometimes we fail, right? And we get distraught. And, oh gosh, why did I fail at this? And it's because we had a different calling, a different purpose, a different meaning, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I look at failure is wow, I was on the wrong path. I'm glad that happened, because what a catastrophe it could have been if I would have kept going on that trajectory.
Yeah.
Um, but you're also a life coach. So that's just an interesting combination to me. And, based on our previous conversations, um, you said something that really stuck out to me, that, your work with, hypnosis and the subconscious mind how you really have to kind of overcome those barriers a little bit in order to have a fulfilled life. And can you talk a little bit more about that and about like specifically life coaching and who can, benefit from that and that sort of thing?
Definitely, yeah. You know, the way we look at it, and I know that you talk about mindset, and that's a term that's out there. And a lot of people discuss that. When I was thinking about that, and really in NLP, breaking that down, what we would call that is strategies, values, and your focus is kind of the three things that we look at. Um, we have strategies for everything we do in life. It's just our step by step way that we get to it. And where strategies come from, our unconscious, what I call unconscious mind. Some people will call subconscious mind, but for the sake of me keeping it straight in my head, I'll call it unconscious mind.
Unconscious.
Um, uh, and that's where that gets stored. And that's kind of how it's like why you don't have to learn how to drive a car every time you go to a car if you drive. You start off learning how to drive a car and your hands are at 10 and 2 and
Yep.
you're looking at your mirrors and you're super focused and okay, first step 1, I've got to sit in here and I buckle up, and step 2 is on and on, you have those steps, okay? And that's a strategy. Well, what happens is that you get that strategy and it changes as you become more familiar because your unconscious mind learns and goes, let me do a shortcut for you. Let me help you with this. I got this. I'll take care of it. So strategies are flexible, and that's very important because you will change them, and that's part of what we're going to talk about. Um, if you have a strategy that's not working in your life, so if there's an area that you're not working in life that's not working in your life,
Mhm.
strategies, values, and focus are three things that I'll look at, and that's what I do with life coaching. Values are what's important to you. So in the context of career, let's say I'm working with a client for career, we'll do a values elicitation. So in the context of career, what's important to you, and what else, and what else, and we'll go through and we'll elicit those, and then we'll put them in order. Okay, so what's the most important, and the next important, and look and see if there's a disconnect. Maybe someone comes to me and they want to make more money, but we elicit their values and it's not on there. Compensation, money, whatever, or maybe it's like my 10th value. You're gonna really act on your first five. And for my NLP people out there that are watching, values are called criteria, but
Hmm.
the rest of us, we call it values. To what's important to you, that's what it breaks down to. So that's it. And then focus. Sometimes we don't have the focus on what we want. You know, and
Yeah.
the first thing I want to say actually is to back up for a second. In our subconscious or unconscious mind, Milton Erickson, who's the father of modern hypnosis, and we love to quote him because Milton was great. That's the training that my main training in hypnosis is Ericksonian hypnosis. He was a medical doctor, and he would call in patients, and he would say the reason patients come to see me is because they're not in communication with their unconscious mind. And sometimes we forget that we have an unconscious mind, and when I
Yeah.
talk to new customers or new clients, I say, well, who breathed for you last night when you were sleeping? Well, who's running your liver right now? So
Mhm.
it's our unconscious mind. Or if you think about what was the phone number at your house when you were a small child? And me, it's 209-835-2612. I haven't lived there. That number doesn't exist anymore. But where was that number before I just said it right now? It was in my unconscious mind. It
Right.
wasn't in my conscious mind, always thinking. So we do have an unconscious mind, and it does a lot of things. It's got a lot of prime directives, which we won't go into today, but it takes care of us in many ways.
I'm curious about these values that you talked about. So you said, we can have a long list of values, but we act on the first 5.
Roughly.
So what are some can you give me some examples of what a value would be? Would this be like core values? Is that what you mean, or something different?
It's just your overall values. It's what's important to you.
Oh,
So
I
in the
see.
context of career, what's important to you? And someone might say, and it's different for everyone. And they might say freedom, um,
Mm,
teamwork, compensation. Someone might say compensation. If someone's first value is compensation, they're probably not a great person to be around because they're not their motivating factor in their life. The thing your first so 5 is, that it's an estimate of what you really act on. Your first one, if you change your first value, you will change your life. the most important thing to you about something, which is your number one value, if you were to change that, which we try not to do that, that's not in the industry, that's kind of frowned upon because it will shift your life. Could you imagine if you change what's the most important to you about, let's say, career,
Yeah.
and you went to money? Well, guess what you're going to focus on? You're going to focus on compensation, and that's
Yeah.
it.
That's
So,
interesting.
mhm,
That's really interesting. Wow. So yeah, because you choose what to focus on. What you focus on becomes you, right? So
right.
that does make sense.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. I learned something new today. Um, Thank you for that gift. But let's go back to hypnosis a little bit
Mhm.
because I think people are really interested in that topic. Who can benefit from something like that, Jason? Because the first time you and I talked, and you said hypnosis is not somebody on stage uh, uh, squawking like a chicken. I think is what you
Yeah,
said.
exactly.
And you're the first hypnotist that I've ever interviewed, so it's interesting to get that perspective. But who can benefit from this, and how does it help people?
That's a great question. So everyone can benefit from hypnosis, and hypnosis is just hyper awareness. It's hyper focus. It's trance, and we all go into trance every day in our lives. I think I shared that with you. You know, the TV watching trance,
Yep.
or the driving, sometimes driving trance. We just kind of focus into that because we're hyper focused. And so that's something that's, we do all the time. But hypnosis allows you to have someone help you, usually a hypnotist like myself, guide you through that process. And so being connected to your unconscious mind is key because that's where change happens. All change happens in your unconscious mind. If you were to just think, if you had an issue in your life that you wanted to change, can you just think, oh, I want this to change, and it changes? That's not how it works.
I wish.
So exactly, if only it was so easy, right?
That's the easy
Um,
button.
yes. But with hypnosis, what we do is we get you in a hyper state of focus, and we do those suggestions. And the suggestions come from you, the client. So we spend a lot of time before having a conversation and finding out what you truly want. And then I would take it and find out how to talk to your unconscious mind in a loving way. They say that the unconscious mind is like talking to a 4 or 5-year-old. So you want to be very passionate, very compassionate rather, and open and talking to your unconscious mind.
Wow.
If your life is not exactly the way you want it right now, if everything's not perfect in your life, or well aligned, let's say, you can benefit from it by talking to your unconscious mind and finding out what it's trying to tell you that it wants to change.
Wow, that's so powerful, Jason.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think, we have these limiting beliefs and this limited, mindset, and we're sometimes our own worst enemies as far as that goes. I feel like tapping into that unconscious mind can really help unravel some of those, hard set things that we've had in our past that have caused us some either stagnation of growth in some kind of way, or just, goal. It could be goal setting, it could be an array of things. But I found that, so many people suffer from such limiting beliefs, and I've often wondered, is that a part of the subconscious mind that, there's something in our history perhaps, or something like that, that, has caused these suppressive actions, ideas, or, ideologies. Um, do you think that's the case?
Oh,
That's part of it?
completely. Yeah, when I see clients, everyone is different, and everyone, what I do with each client with when I do coaching is totally different because each person is
Mhm.
an individual. However, the one thing that I usually start with is we get rid of negative emotions from the past and limiting decisions from the past. And just to your
Ooh,
point, that's it exactly. So everything that's going on, we see life through filters, and our unconscious mind holds these filters. So, and where do these filters come from? These filters
mhm.
come from past events,
Yep.
significant emotional events, positive events. Someone you cared for might have said something. You might have had an incident that happened, And we make rules in our unconscious mind. And we're not conscious about it a lot of the times, but it becomes a rule. You're 3 years old, the next door neighbor's dog gets loose and barks at you and scares you. You might now, I'm not saying this, so I'm not installing this with anybody. If you love dogs, we all love dogs. But there's the possibility that you could then have a rule that dogs are scary or dogs are bad. You're now 40 years old and you don't know why you don't like dogs, but you just don't feel comfortable around dogs. And that's that limiting decision from the past that's showing up. And so with hypnosis, we go back to it because emotions are great. Emotions are telling us something's going on if we listen to them. You know, there's a quote that says, "Life will throw ping pong balls before it throws bowling balls." So, your unconscious mind is like, "Hey, something's going on." And if you don't listen, it just gets more and more and more. And that's how illness can come around and things of that nature. But what we can do is go back and learn the lesson. So let's go back to that event through hypnosis. We'll, get you in a deep, nice trance, feel
Mhm.
safe, feel comfortable. And then we'll go back to as this example when you're 3 years old and say, what's the lesson to learn from that event, which will allow you to let go of any of these negative emotions and this event. And they could say, oh, well, it was, maybe they'll say, oh, it was just that dog. Yeah, I was actually safe because there was a fence between us, and they learn that lesson and their unconscious mind relearns what that event meant and everything else changes from then till now. And you change that rule.
Wow. So it's almost like rewiring your brain.
Exactly. That's neuro linguistic programming using hypnosis as well is just that is, it's programming. It's called neuro linguistic programming. Now, this was in the 70s and computers were just coming about and they were both, anyway, that's the name's always challenged, but that's what happens, using the language of the mind or, being able to rewire, as you said, those things of the past.
Wow. So, do you have to remember these events, or is that the whole point of tapping into the unconscious mind through hypnosis is that you don't have to know them and acknowledge them necessarily on surface level, but how do you break through to something like that, Jason? That's fascinating to me.
So the first thing you want to do is you really want to be, and this is what, you do the pre-talk and stuff, is that you want to be in rapport with your unconscious mind. So really be in connection with your unconscious mind, trust your unconscious mind, having that connection. I'll say a lot of times, just trust what comes up. Well, I don't know. Well, if you were to know what comes up, and it doesn't, and here's the, no, don't tell anybody, but here's the secret. It doesn't matter if it's real or not.
Wow.
So there are some things that are hardwired that are based on significant emotion. That's the way our unconscious mind works in symbols. And if you ever watched like a crime show and they ask about what happened at this crime scene and two or more people have the exact same story, what do they always say? It's fake because you don't remember exactly the same. So our unconscious mind remembers in symbols, and that's why we remember things differently. Um, but also it's just about making that change and allowing that change to happen. So once we get them in a good deep trance, they're in communication with their unconscious mind, go back to that first event, whatever comes up, and we let them go back to whatever shows up, real or not real, it doesn't matter, because what's happening is their unconscious mind is dealing with whatever was back there. And the symbols that you see may not be the hard, we'll say air quote facts, but it's allowing the unconscious mind and you to communicate about it and to process whatever was back there to allow it to change.
Wow, that's fascinating to me. But you're exactly right. So, if you look at a car accident, every single person that's viewed that car accident has a completely different perspective of it. The driver
Right.
has a different perspective than the person on the right corner, the left corner, the front, the side, or the back. So that is fascinating. I've never thought about it like that because we just think of one perspective, and that our
Right.
one perspective must be the correct one because it was our experience. But it is a perspective,
Right.
and just because it we perceive it as something that has happened that we think of it as, hardwired, doesn't mean that it can't change because, um, that's the power of tapping into that unconscious mind and kind of unraveling those blockages that are preventing you from whatever it is you're trying to accomplish or achieve, right? Um,
Exactly.
that's fascinating to me. It really is.
Yeah.
Um,
And
oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to share one quick thing. It's just because I think, regardless of where we're coming from, I think whether it's personal, business, mindset, communication is key. That's something that in my previous career, I was a trainer, and I trained about communication skills, and I think it's very important because we being connected and communicating properly, I think, is very key. And I just wanted to share with you real quick an exercise that I do if someone's having trouble, because it just fits to what you were just saying,
Mhm.
the perspective. If someone's having issues with communication that they've had with somebody, or that they're going to have with somebody, and they're concerned, it's called perceptual positions, and it's just what you're talking about. So the first thing I do is I have the client see the event, or the coming event, through their own eyes. So looking through their own eyes, seeing what they would see, seeing that other person they're going to talk to, and seeing how that conversation looks. Then I have them. Now here's where the fun part comes. I have them float out of their body, float into the other person's body, looking through that person's eyes back at them, and seeing how that communication looked, or is going to look. And then we have them float above both parties and look
Wow.
down at that event and see how that event looks and what really happened. And it gets you that different perspectives, and it's very eye-opening, and it really is helpful when it comes to communication. And that's something where you're in trance when you start floating out of your own body. Trust me, you're in trance.
Wow, that's you're getting into a whole we could probably have a series on this actually because that's a topic that I'm very interested in.
Yeah,
But it is it's all about perspective and the power of your mind and that we have the control, right? I feel like
yeah,
sometimes we either give up our control knowingly or unknowingly, but either way we tend to give up our control. We tend to give up um you know give up those things and it causes those limited reactions over time or limited beliefs or whatever because we've given away a piece of control with again wittingly or unwittingly, right?
right,
But it is interesting though when you start to think of how someone else perceived it and then taking the 10,000-foot view of
yeah,
how really everything is perceived. So it's interesting taking things from different angles and it puts it into a different perspective, which can rewire your brain over time.
yeah.
That's fascinating to me. But you're also a life coach. So,
Mhm.
you have this perspective of hypnosis and tapping into the unconscious mind to relieve past traumas, blockages, etc. But then you're also a life coach.
Right,
So taking people from I feel like that would be, the groundwork, right? The foundational aspect of it is the hypnosis and the subconscious. And then farther after that, it's developing now that you've removed those blockages and are rewiring your brain, going into really the reworks of an establishment of a better life.
right.
So, can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the life coaching aspect of that as well that goes after the hypnosis and the unconscious mind?
Definitely. When clients come to see me, I really have, um, there's one kind of overarching thing that's there, and they're not where they want to be in life, whatever that looks like. And whether
Yeah.
that's personal or professional, I see for both, and there's two things that fall under that. So if they're not where they're at, where they want to be in life, so one main group is that they're not sure. They're not sure of what they want. And the other group is they want to accomplish something specific. So the group that's not sure, I help them get clarity as a life coach. If you were to ask somebody about their life and, well, what do you want? They can give you a laundry list of what they don't want. And that's information. That's good. That helps me kind of see where they're coming from. But then
Mhm.
I turn it around and say, okay, but what do you want?
Yeah.
And I really help them to establish and get that very specific goal of what do they want, and then help them get there through changing strategies or
Yep.
looking at their values or what do they focus on. Focus is very important. And it's the same thing with, if someone comes to me and things are good, I'm doing great, but one of my clients, he owned, at the time he owned one business, and he was thinking about opening a second business, and we worked together. He actually ended up opening a second business and then opened a third business as well. He had some other goals. So it's at both ends of the spectrum, wherever you're at, taking you from where you are and helping you get to that next level of where you want to go. That's life coaching. That's really what it's about, is helping you see that. And then to your point, it's called generative change, giving them the tools to continue to support that as they go forward in life without that life coach with them.
I love that. So last night I had a conversation with Brian Covey, who's the VP of Loan Depot, and he's an ex-Olympic soccer player.
Hmm.
And we talked about vision, and that was
Right.
we stuck on that topic for a little while because as an ex-Olympic athlete and uh, VP of a large company, you have to have a definiteness of vision,
Right.
and it's almost I think of the eye of the tiger, right? So it's a corny saying, the eye of the tiger, but if you've ever seen a tiger come at you, right, their eyes don't waver.
Focused.
They have
Right.
a focus that is unlike anything else I've ever seen in nature. And you have to have that definiteness of a vision and a focus in order for you to know what you want.
Yep.
I think so many people get so upset of why they're not getting what they want, but have they even put it down on paper as to exactly what they want?
Right.
um that you have to know what you want in order to get it. And that's a good groundwork for laying out the foundation of any goal that you want. You have to have that vision and keep it in the
Right.
forefront of your mind as well, because if you
Yeah.
don't, you get easily distracted by life and by everything, right? um
Exactly.
But no, that's the key is, first you have to uncover the unconscious mind, figure out what's blocking you, and then work with somebody like you that can help guide them through a process to get to their goals, to get to their objectives based on, what they want in life. And then, keeping that vision steady as well.
Yep.
That's amazing. I think that's very inspiring, Jason.
Yep. After every first session I have with a client, their first homework is they have to focus on what they do want. When they
Yeah,
when they leave our session, I'm like, from now until we meet again, I want you to only focus on what you do want and see what changes in your life. And it really can help turn that corner for them. And what you focus on is what shows up. That's the
yep,
universal rule. And then there's a scientific thing, the reticulating activating system, which is a part of our end of our brainstem, that it does a lot of things, but basically what it does is you program it of what to look for, and it looks for it. Before I bought my red Mazda car and I decided I wanted to buy a red Mazda, guess what I started seeing on the freeway a lot when I was commuting? Red
red card.
Mazdas.
Oh,
Yes,
ooh.
because that's what I put in there. That's what I put it to focus on. And so that's an actual part of our neurology that it focuses on. Not to go too far in that, but it's very important to focus on what you do want because of that. Yeah.
Wow. So, in other words, we create our own realities.
Some might say. Yes.
That might be
Yes.
episode 2.
Yes.
But no, I think there is something to that because I think we do create our own realities. And it's interesting, right? And again, we think so many things happen to us, but I'm like you, and I'm of the belief and the mindset that we create our own realities and we kind of pave the way. And
Yeah,
if nothing happens to us without our permission, right? So
exactly.
yeah, I love that. Well,
Yeah.
This was an awesome talk. I could probably talk for hours about this subject,
Yes.
but I am really interested in the out of body experience that you were talking about as well. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and it's important. People need to have an open mind about this type of thing because you really can change somebody's life with this neuro linguistic programming that you're talking about. So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
perfect. If you wouldn't mind, Jason, after the show, just putting in your links so that everybody can follow you, and then your website and any other links that you have, so that people can reach out to you
Definitely.
for help, because I think a lot of people could use this. I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing. So this is
Yep.
awesome. All
Thank you
right.
so
Well,
much.
thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you being on my live show today, and
Yes.
reach out to Jason. He is amazing, everybody. And we will talk
Thank you.
soon, everyone.
All right. Have a good day.